The Time Shadow would become Time Force's second, or sort of in a way, third Megazord, appearing through a portal from the future that would create an eclipse in present day that for some reason would stick around because the battle would continue as though night covered day. This aerodynamic stealth bomber's distinct cool factor and very black colour scheme gave our core team another blast from the future. The Time Shadow also offers a fun combination with either mode of Time Force Megazord, with probably one of the best combo names ever, Shadow Force Megazord. Some Megazord names just hit, and Shadow Force is definitely one of them. On to toy history. The year 2000 was the first version release of the toy over in Japan for Timeranger. Curiously, this one had the exact same name when adapted for Power Rangers a year later. Both are called the Time Shadow. I mean, a cool name is a cool name, whatever part of the world you're in. Time Shadow is also kind of what it does too, as we've already mentioned, its mode of appearance. I feel it was the conclusion to several years of Megazord ships. They all started with the Astro and Delta Megazord and sort of the Mega Winger. It continued with Max Solar Zord, and now this. The role of two of those previous ships was to combine with the default Megazord of the season, and the combo would give it cannons. It kind of became a trope. We seem to jump away from the pattern of creating an Ultrazord into this cannon-wielding dual Megazord combo pattern instead. It all ends here though, you've guessed it, with cannons. Once again we have a jet that supports the Rangers but sort of belongs to no one. Just like Delta Megazord and Max Solar Zord, which admittedly was introduced as the Titanium Ranger Zord before getting modelled on the Japanese version where it would be just controlled remotely by the Red Ranger. Time Shadow is definitely another Zord in that ilk, but had the mystique, both of fighting in scenes cloaked by darkness and by being remotely piloted by an unknown ally from the future. Spoiler, it was Jen's ex-fiancé Alex, who we had been led to believe was dead, but somehow time had changed. Those previous season combos required the ship to be separated into lots of pieces. Time Shadow though tries to keep everything together as one piece for its combo mode, something I really appreciate. Onto the design, so there's two modes of its own. I guess the Shadow Winger mode, which is similar in size to the combined Time Flyer jet mode, a little wider though. This is actually nice to hold using the arc handle at the back and seems remarkably sleek, and unlike those previous ships, really solid because of how it's been engineered. The only bulky part are its legs, and these have been gotten out of the way by folding them into cannons on the wing edges. This was smart and overcame the obvious problem they always have with these jet Zords of where do the legs go without it being obvious. There are these die-cast metal rails which form the sort of frame structure of the Zord. Almost everything in the transformation correlates to these in some way and slide up or down depending on the mode. We've not had that before, and it's another out-of-the-box sort of futuristic way of thinking that we have to give them credit for. In Megazord mode you have yet another generic-looking robot. I do wonder if they just couldn't agree what the look should be for the future, or if in fact this is the look. But to me it seems quite plain and like they're just playing it safe. You also notice a big reliance on grey and silver as they emerge as the most used colours again. However, it's kind of fair enough, no other season had relied on using those colours throughout an entire Zord line, so why not? Unlike the Time Force Megazord, which does do a good job at hiding the time flyers within the combinations, I feel the big wing backpack plus the front window chest plate makes it quite clear what this one has transformed from. And this is ridiculous, but I've never been so aware of a Megazord's feet. There are gun hands, which are similar in a way to the missile hands of the Dragon Zord, a nice callback perhaps, and also not dissimilar from the Delta Megazord having Gatling gun fingers. I love the orange pop of colour inside the wings where the arms deploy from. In the show these provided more firepower, so it's nice to see them represented here as more than just a sticker. And actually, speaking of stickers, once again, look how few there were on this thing. Yeah, they were really moving away from stickers. The dual wielding blades are helpfully stored within the legs of the Time Shadow, and the translucent material used gives us another first. They're cool weapons, and they even have a combined mode that evokes the idea of a crescent moon, tying it in with its eclipse entrance scenes. In battle mode, the Megazord scales the same as the Time Force Megazord in both modes if you ignore the high shoulders on mode blue. The Shadow Force Megazord combination is interesting in that it gives us an upgraded weapon and new visor piece. This actually reminds me of the Lights of Orion power-up, because it's unusual for pieces like this to just appear out of thin air when not part of the design initially. They did address this on the show. The weapon is also transported back from the future, and that green cockpit is actually a time portal. It's clever, if a little bit of a cheat. It seems to me like they wanted to do the inverse of what had become the recent secondary Zord becomes armor trope, and this time for the most part the Zord Combiner becomes more of a frame or backpack attachment rather than a front piece. The only armor that actually protects the default Megazord are face, chest and feet armor. I'm not sure if this was very effective, but don't worry, we'll get to that later. On to differences from the original. Well, when comparing to the Bandai Japan version, it's same in name and same in toy for the most part. We've managed to keep all the metal pieces again on the back, on the hinges which allow the legs to rotate, and on the rails of course that facilitate the whole transformation. The only differences I can discern are in the weapon for the combined mode, where once again they removed the light and sound feature. Bandai America had a bit of a checkered history in terms of electronics removal, following them taking the electronics away from Season 3's Falcon Zord and the Return of Titanus Dragon Zord chess piece, and then 3 seasons before this, in space, they took away the motorized feature from Silver Titanus. So at this point in the timeline, by my count, they had skipped electronics in 4 Zords, but they had kept them in 7, those being Dragon Zord, Titanus, White Tiger Zord, Tor the Shuttle Zord, Red Battle Zord, Robo Racer, and Astro Megazord. Now, the Shadow Force Megazord weapon should have been our 8th, but I imagine they were cheaping out and wanting to keep the budget down, or maybe they'd worked out that the extra weight of the batteries could drag the Megazord's arm down, so they decided to remove it. I'd say it doesn't ruin the overall toy in any way, it was just a light and sound feature, and I guess they were saving themselves for the electronics laden landmine that was the Q-Rex. But I do wish it was included, and while we are on the low notes, what's bad about it? Well, because of the rail mechanism, the transformation can't be achieved accurately to the show, where the chest piece would close up before the legs swung down. In toy form, the rails stop the jet component from being adjustable when the rails are pushed in. You have to pull them out to get the 90 degrees of movement there. And at that, they're quite a clunky mechanism which often gets stuck. The connection of the chest piece is very fragile, I wish it clipped on stronger. There's a very unhelpful weighted wing backpack, constantly pulling it backwards and making standing it up on carpet impossible, much like the Mega Winger. But at least there you could remove the wings. Here it's all one piece. The Crescent weapons don't actually slot into its leg slots very perfectly, and it can't hold them like it does on the show where they seem more like extensions of its arms. It just holds them differently. I should make a point of the arms trying something new for a Megazord. The storage space in Winger mode is so tight, which allows it to complete the look of a solid wing. Slide the arm down and you reveal a thin telescopic arm and gives you a large amount of posability. But in reality, I've never gotten on very well with these, often accidentally pulling them down too far so that they detach, or not getting the position on the ball joint quite right, so they don't actually have enough friction to stay in place. Also, this inadvertently means that other than just its 2 weapons, the main body of the Time Shadow does have 2 pieces which can come off and be lost, and you do see that on the aftermarket quite a bit. So a fun futuristic design idea that ultimately suffers in the realised toy. We do see that quite a bit in this season, don't we? Ambitious ideas, maybe not carried out perfectly. For the Shadow Force modes, while it is a combo, to me it feels very much like a Red Ranger Battleizer, but done as a Megazord edition. Maybe that's just what happens with Power Rangers in the future. In both these modes, the Time Force Megazord gains wings, a weapon, and a new visor. What I'm trying to say is that the combos may be not as radical as the Astro Delta Megazord or the Lightspeed Solar Zord, which felt totally different to their own component Megazords. It should be said, assembly of Shadow Force Megazord is frustrating. It's not that intuitive, things like the secondary mode requiring you to flip feet locks over, but I often forget which way around they're actually supposed to be. There's these grey plastic grabber arms which at least fill in the space left slightly skinnier on the Time Force Megazord, but they don't lock perfectly, and similar is the chest piece, which you can push in against the rails to try and secure it a bit better. Shadow Force Mode Blue requires detaching the arms in order to use the grabber claws that hold it in place, and then when it is all assembled you can't really move the arms because of the wing backpack. I'm sure the monsters will be fretting over punches from those tiny forearms. but it's not as exact a science as we've been used to from combiners like this. There's no final satisfaction of many of the pieces clicking into place, a lot of it just rests there. Even the visor piece seems a little wobbly and is easily skewed. Okay though, but what's good about it? Well, despite not featuring on the show, following the mostly hidden landing gear of the Time Flyers, here's another way of doing it. Giant wheel bars on its legs do a 180-degree flip to be unveiled. It makes the Time Shadow very maneuverable in vehicle mode, if a little one-directional favoured. That might just be my one though. Continuing the cockpit theme from the first release, Time Shadow has a very subtle silver and green disc on the top of the winger. This snaps open to reveal 5 seats. Again, it's completely unnecessary if you couldn't get your hands on the minifigures, but it is unobtrusively hidden away, so you could ignore it if you didn't need it. There seems to have been a concerted effort by the design team here to add more transformation ability without turning it into a separating parts former. The sum for Power Rangers, really dynamic engineering that we've not seen before. That rails design surely allows for some extra flexibility and allows a piece to change direction in a complicated way while technically staying together as a one-piece toy. Those die-cast ankle hinges are really unique too, and I can't think of another way that this would have worked, and I'm very glad Bandai America didn't make them plastic, as they have a bit of a pattern of doing. The ball jointed arms and rotatable hands, while not as posable as the line best Zeo Megazord's arms, it's nice that they tried to give us a bit more here, especially when compared to its past compatriots, the Delta Megazord and the Max Solar Zord, where the arms were definitely lacking. And before we go into the combinations, I do really appreciate that they came up with a place on the toy for the Shadow Force weapon and visor to go. The Shadow Force combinations are proportionally nice, and I like that beyond the new weapon and visor, they've used the wings and cannons to communicate that even in the combinations, there are differences. I like that they didn't make it so the Time Shadow and Time Force Megazord could only combine in one of the coloured modes. I like that even to this extent they have kept red and blue equal in the options that they have, and that they introduce fitting upgrades to their usual signature weapon. Of course, Mode Red still gets the most because he also has the cannons. I do like that Shadow Force Mode Blue has this continued triangular look to it. Triangles are a big deal across all of the Time Force Zords, a nice extension of the Ranger's suit design. Overall, I just really appreciate that in 2 Shadow Force combinations, they managed to make them feel sufficiently different. And what was somewhat of a criticism in the individual Time Force Megazord release becomes an advantage here. The big arms in both its modes actually look the part when added into Shadow Force, and that's because there's no changes to the arms in this combo, so it's actually for the best. I've been treating Shadow Force as part of a trilogy of canon-based combiners from recent seasons, but really it's one of these rare 6 Zord Megazords where the original Megazord is still on show and just gets a powerful update. In that sense, it actually follows the Mega Dragon Zord and Zeo Mega Battle Zord. It's just nice to get one of these every now and then. Time Shadow was a clever toy. It's one of those releases where practically everything on it has a secondary purpose somewhere else. It's remarkably subtle about this, and while it's not the flashiest Megazord of the season because of the bulky wing component, and it basically being less interesting than the default and 6 Megazords surrounding it, it is another impressively designed Megazord using many techniques that we've not seen before that continued the run of interesting, fairly unique creations for Time Force. While the toy is sadly on par with the durability and frustration factor of most combination enabling Megazords, I appreciate what they were going for, and I like that the combination protects the overall look of the original Megazord while giving it a good array of newness. That's it then, the Time Shadow can head back to the future for now. Meanwhile, lost in the past, we have another Megazord to look for. Q-Rex is up next. In the meantime, let me know in the comments what you think of Time Shadow. I have noticed some online comments from people saying they used to love this thing and now can't think why. I wonder though if that's a case of the in-show version giving us a more dynamic impression that the toy couldn't live up to. Just a theory though, your suggestions please, and until the next time, see you later.